Hello, hello. How are
Hey,
you?
good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
This is something completely new. I've never done this on my channel. I know you go live all the time. You have Bible
Mhm.
studies on Monday, so you are very used to being on and front and center.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about just how did you get on this path of like being in front of the camera?
It's a funny that I used to actually have really terrible stage fright, so it's laughable that God would have me like do this. But really, I as I was really getting into ministry and I was doing, I was a worship leader, so I'm kind of used to being in the forefront. But my randomly my pastor was like, I started to teach Bible study and that kind of stuff. He was like, you should really start a podcast. I think people would listen to you. And so I started with just the podcast and it was just audio. And I kind of got into the groove of teaching, and then I started to go live a lot on Facebook and talk about, spiritual things, teach about God, whatever messages God was giving me to give to the people at the time. And so it just kind of transpired from there, and it's just kind of grown into where we are now, teaching, teaching live, teaching on Zoom, sometimes preaching live, so yeah, it's just been kind of a journey because I was like, God, I don't do people, I don't do speaking in front of people. I don't want to be on nobody's stage in front of, and he was like, ha
Yes, yes. Well, then tell me about the coaching aspect because to, I love how we have just combined the therapeutic approach with the
ha.
spiritual approach. And so, would you consider yourself like a spiritual coach?
Yeah. I so a lot of actually what I do is one-on-one coaching, even though that's not originally what I embarked upon this to do. It's just kind of like I kind of fell into it because I find that um, you know, people go to church, right, and they read their Bible, and they but the one-on-one, like kind of hands-on, I found that a lot of people would go to church and they would hear messages and they would say, um but how do I know what God wants me to do? How do I get to the individualized understanding of me, myself? What is my purpose? What does God want me to know? Am I doing the right thing specifically for me? Like I heard what the pastor said, but how do I zero in on me specifically, my life? What is God's specific will and purpose for my life? And how do I know if I'm headed in the right direction? And so that's kind of how I ended up doing a lot of the one-on-one coaching. And then, just kind of helping people not, and it started off with kind of helping people find their direction, because I'm prophetic. So God would give me messages and give people, God says he wants you to do this, and God says he wants you to do that. But then you get the message and you're like, well, wait, okay, I got that, but how do I get there? Like, how do I navigate to what God wants me to do? What are the steps, and what do I need to do, and what do I need to know, and how do I need to be prepared? And so that's how I kind of got into the one-on-one coaching, aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I have my own personal testimony well, Faith is my line sister, but my friend, but my own personal testimony is where I was struggling with, really showing myself,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
vulnerable in front of the camera, because when you're a therapist, you want to make sure that you're presenting the information act factual,
Mm-hmm.
um evident based as possible. But then it's like, okay, Faith, well, they're not really seeing you. So that
Mm-hmm.
was like step one to the journey. And then step two is like, okay, they have the information. Like they
Mm-hmm.
have the information, especially with narcissism, they have the information, but how do we take it a step further? And so this whole idea to go live birthed at a healthy, we had a healthy debate. So I put up
Right.
a post about the 7 sins, and I titled the first one Greed.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about how narcissists are greedy and all of the things. And Faith called me and she was like, sis, you might want to look at the title. You might want to look at how you titled this. And I'm like, why? Sin leads to death. It's a deadly sin. And she's like, yeah, but you're not showing the whole picture. You are not showing people that redemption is there. And a light bulb went out. And I think for me, marrying what I do in private practice and what
Mm-hmm.
I do on social media is where I'm at now. So
Mm-hmm.
in my private practice, I have clients who come to me and identify with narcissistic traits. They want an assessment, either they are facing divorce or, they've hit rock bottom and they want help. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's natural to me. I know there's redemption. I know there's healing. I have had many clients who have, come in desperation and who have grown traumatically, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't show that part on social media. I
Yeah.
don't show that part in social media. So it's almost like, okay, this is the next, this is next. And I know it's
Mm-hmm.
not what people want to hear. People want to
Right.
hear they're horrible. They can, they're the devil. They're the
Mm-hmm.
devil. This is how they've made me hurt. And so let's talk about the hurt. But people very rarely want to hear the redemption side. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think that is? Like, why people want to hear, like, this is the sin, the sin, the sin, the sin, but not the redemption side?
Well, I think one is because, when we're hurt, it's hard to get to a place of compassion for someone that's hurt you, especially when you're still hurting. It's easier to get to that place once you've got on the other side and you've really healed from it, and because you can then be able to appreciate the humanity of that person. And but I think when we're in the midst of hurting, you all you can see when you look at that person is your trauma. And so it's very difficult. And I think one, um accountability in any type of relationship goes two ways, right? So I think sometimes people don't want to embrace the fact that sometimes their decisions kept them in those relationships, or they chose to be in those relationships even though they saw the red flags. And sometimes that's a very difficult thing to face too. So sometimes it's easier to cast the anger and the frustration on the other person, and not have to look at my own accountability in this situation too, because we all have accountability on both sides of the situation. So yes, you may have experienced the abuse or trauma from um being involved with somebody who displays narcissistic traits, but we also have a responsibility for ourselves, right? And the decisions that we make in regard to the people that we decide to connect ourselves with. And I think that that's a difficult thing, where and I also think that um it's easy for us to sympathize with a person that is victimized by someone who experiences narcissistic traits. And it's way more difficult for us to embrace compassion for someone who we see consistently hurting people.
Yeah.
But, hurt people hurt people,
Hurt people, hurt people, hurt
you
people,
know.
hurt people. And I think the people on my platform are ready for more.
Mm-hmm.
I think people in general are ready for more. We
Mm-hmm.
we have so much information I mean, at this point, we have Google, we have AI, we
Right.
have so much information, and now it's about wisdom. It is about
Mm-hmm.
applying the information that
Mm-hmm.
we have, and
Mm-hmm.
it's about going on to step two. And so I'm ready to go to another level. I've been stagnant, and the reason why I have paused on posting is because I know it's time for another level, and I've been waiting.
Yeah.
God just showed me, and the conversation that we had, the debate that we had was really the push that I needed to
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what, we've got to move from just listing traits and
Mm-hmm.
identifying characteristics. We've got to really move towards healing people,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
healing for the survivor and healing for the person who is experiencing narcissistic traits are two different paths. And so I
Right.
want to let you know right now, if you are a survivor, if you are in a relationship with someone who experiences or is experiencing narcissistic, or you're married to one, your parents, whatever, your healing is completely different than their healing.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different. So, what is redemption? Just let's start from scratch for people who
Mm-hmm.
don't know God, and we're putting it out there right away. Like this, we are women of God. We love
Yes.
God. You know, I know it's not for everyone, but
Mm-hmm.
this is we're 10 toes down. This is where
Right.
we stand. So
Right.
tell them about what redemption. What is that?
Well, redemption really is grace. We as believers believe that Jesus died on the cross for our sins. So, prior to that, um the wrath of God was on the table as a result of sin, right? But when Jesus died, it gave us the opportunity to be redeemed from our sin, meaning we don't have to pay the ultimate penalty for our sin. We and I think that the thing that we need to understand, that I think a lot of people, even believers, don't remember, that when you decide you want to change, that redemption is really about the decision. God is just waiting for you to make a decision that you want to be different, that you want to do something different, that you don't want to be stuck in this cycle of dysfunction, and that you want to change.
Mhm.
And when you make the decision, that's really what it is. You have to decide, I want to change. I want my life to be different. I want my relationships to be different. I don't want to continue to have failed relationships, because that's a thing that a narcissist is experiencing, right? They're continuing to have all of these dysfunctional relationships, and we have to decide first that we want to change. And then when we make a decision, we have to be willing to do the work of
Yeah.
change. And when we do that, God meets you there.
Hmm.
And the other thing that we have to remember is that once you make that decision and once you decide to change, you can't berate yourself anymore for what you did in the past. And I think that's one of the things that keeps people in cycles,
Hmm.
because we decide we want to change, and we decide that we want to move forward, and we start to change ourselves. But watch, here's the other thing that we don't do: we sometimes don't remove ourselves from the people that will keep reminding us of who we were,
Yeah.
and will keep viewing us for who we were instead of who we're trying to become. And those people will keep you in the cycle of falling back into those same dysfunctional um um habits and behaviors. So when you decide you change, you got to change everything around you too, and you got to start to take inventory of what's around you too. Because if you've been somebody who's been displaying narcissistic traits, right? You also have to remember that there's also a circle of people around you who have been watching you do that. And maybe some of them have been trying to hold you accountable, and maybe some of them haven't.
Hmm.
So now you need people in your circle who are going to be invested in your healing, in your deliverance, in your transformation too. So it's not just about you, it's also about your surroundings. But the truth of redemption is that God really just wants you to give you an opportunity to decide you want to do something different. And
Mhm.
then he will meet you there. And then he will clean up all of that mess. I like to call it stains on your shirt.
Uh-huh.
He gonna get you the Tide pin and say, look, this is, let's clean this mess up so that you're not wearing this, so that you're not carrying this anymore, and so that you can be free, so that you can be set free, because that stuff will keep you in bondage,
It's
you
true.
know.
It's
Yeah.
true. So the question on the table today, what we're going to be discussing is there an opportunity for a narcissist to change, to be healed, to be redeemed, to be delivered? And we are both stand. We're not going to leave you with a cliffhanger so that you have to wait all the way to the end to figure out the answer. Yes, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a yes, but and, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but
Mm-hmm.
and. So for the people listening, they're like, oh, this sounds great. Narcissist makes a decision. In order for a person with empathy to make a decision, that probably means that they have to have reflected and processed and have some level of empathy. And I've been told over and over and over and over that narcissists don't have empathy. They don't reflect. And I just want to say, I want to clear up the difference between cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. Because
Mm-hmm.
to say that someone does not feel is, I think what has happened is we have so many people on social media, YouTube, who are putting out just bad information. They're putting out information so that they can get a click, they
Mm-hmm.
can get a like, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to explain something so complex in a 90-second video.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So,
Absolutely.
so narcissists lack emotional empathy,
Mm-hmm.
but they do have cognitive empathy. And what cognitive empathy is, they understand intellectually how their behavior impacts themselves and others.
Mm-hmm.
But with that understanding, they're also able to see how you might react. And so they sometimes use that manipulation. So, for example, I know I cheat on you. I know you leave me. Therefore, I'll hide the fact that I'm cheating to avoid you leaving me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's cognitive empathy. They
Mm-hmm.
understand how their behavior impacts. So to say that somebody cannot feel or recognize or understand is just false, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in therapy, what we do is we help the person. We start with where you're at, where you might have cognitive empathy, understand that your wife is leaving, your husband's leaving, your children don't talk to you anymore. Okay, you understand that intellectually.
Mm-hmm.
So we work, and it's a process, but we work to figure out how do we help you with emotional empathy, is where you can put yourself in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's raining, but you're not looking out the window watching people get wet. You are saying, what would it be like if I were out there in the rain with them?
Right.
The process. Do you
Right.
spiritually, what do you think the blockage might be where people are unable to feel how what could be going on spiritually with them?
Well, I'll tell you, it's so funny because I literally was thinking about this live and God dropped something on me. Um, and I just kind of wrote it down. And he was like, people that display narcissistic traits view life through the lens of their trauma instead of through the lens of truth. And so they this is one of the reasons why they don't do accountability well, because they can't see truth. They're constantly seeing things through the lens of trauma. And when I think about that, it makes me think about like them literally seeing everything in life, and everything in life being a trigger of the trauma that they've experienced. And so instead of being able to sift, what is truth and what is trauma, everything is trauma.
Mm.
And when everything is trauma, I'm trying to do any and everything I can possibly do to not have to experience or confront or come to terms with that trauma that I've experienced. And again, that also comes along with accountability, which is why they find it difficult to be accountable.
Mhm.
Like, and I think that spiritually, um when I'll just tell you about, I've had personal experiences with people who experience narcissistic traits, and the struggle for me, one, has been that I think you're right. I think that they know how their behavior has affected other people, but they're not willing to do the work of change. And I'm going to tell you why I think that is. I think that a lot of times they're looking at the situation and believing that they've done so much and been so far gone that can I even really come back from this thing?
Mm. Okay.
And
So like,
are they going to be willing to forgive me after all of this has happened? And so I think that what happens is there's a double down that occurs. It's like,
okay.
well, this is who I am. This is where I'm at. I've gotten this far being this way. So I'm just going to continue because it's going to be way harder for me to go back and try to undo all of these things. And it's going to be way more painful for me if I try to change, if I change my heart, right? And the people that I love, and let's just be clear, they don't know how to express love effectively, but
Right.
it doesn't mean that they don't feel love, right? They just don't express it in the right ways. And so I think it's if the people that I love, when I try to change and I try to make myself better, don't embrace me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can come back from that.
Oh yeah, they don't want to be wrong, be
Mm-hmm.
identified as wrong. They don't want to feel shame at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what about this attitude of superiority? What about, and what we call it is the spirit of pride, but
Mm-hmm.
um I am better than, this air that I'm better than. And so I don't need to apologize. I don't need to be with one person at a time. I don't need to be honest about where I'm going, who I'm with. I am here and everyone else is here. And the fact that I'm in their life at all, they should be worshiping.
You know what I think about pride? Any more often than not, whenever I call out, see, or discern the spirit of pride, more often than not, the spirit of pride comes from not wanting to be seen,
Hmm.
as in not wanting your truth to be seen.
Hmm.
So if I bring this big, bold, loud, overarching personality to you, you're going to focus on that instead of my broken pieces,
Hmm.
instead of my shortcomings. So I'm going to be this, because I want you to, as long as you're looking at me as like the big bad wolf, watch this, the big bad wolf doesn't want to be seen as weak
Hmm.
or broken
Hmm.
or hurt or wounded. That's what the spirit of pride does. It kind of covers up that, because now you're focusing on the behaviors that they display as a result of the spirit of pride, and you're not focusing on their shortcomings, their broken places, the areas where maybe they don't want to be seen or don't want to be exposed.
Right. And the problem with the big bad wolf is you can't choose one day to be a big bad wolf and then tomorrow to be my
Yes.
sheep, because there's no role switching. Once we see you as the
Mm-hmm.
big bad wolf, we are in protective mode. We are
Yes,
afraid. So it's a double-edged sword, because what they
it
want
is.
so bad is also what hurts them.
Mm-hmm.
What they
Mm-hmm.
want so bad is to process the trauma and move
Mm-hmm.
past the trauma and
Mm-hmm.
be loved. But when you are okay, so they are faced with either or.
Mm-hmm.
Either I show up with my trauma, lost, weak, not knowing my identity, afraid that nobody will accept me, or I put on a mask that I am amazing and good and higher than everyone else. And there's a chance that people like this version of me.
Mm-hmm.
If you are faced with either or,
Mm-hmm.
many times people will go with the persona.
Oh yeah.
The
Oh,
persona
absolutely.
safer. The persona
Mm-hmm.
feels safer. And so, yeah, go ahead.
And also the persona you can control.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. When you start to allow yourself to be exposed and be vulnerable, you have less control than you do when you create. And let's just be real, whether you display narcissistic traits or not, plenty of us have put on a persona in some point or place, and more often than not, it's because we're looking for a certain level of validation,
Yeah.
or because we're trying to cover up something that we're insecure about.
Yeah.
And so that's what that persona is. It's like, I got control of this. I can control how you see me, how I move. But if I take that off,
Mm-hmm.
and you begin to see the real me, and I have to be vulnerable, I have less control in that area.
Exactly. And when they finally do expose that vulnerability, let's say they've been in a long-term relationship, or they're your brother and you live with them every single day, and so you see that, if you try to hold a mirror in front of them so that they can see it,
Mm-hmm.
then you get the rage,
Oh yes.
anger,
Oh yes.
then you get all of that. So it has to be done properly. It really has to be done in a setting. And there's so many people. I did a video on things not to say to a narcissist. You don't want to call a narcissist a narcissist. It's not, it is just going to backfire on you. It is better that they are working in an environment with somebody who can really help them peel back the layers properly.
Yeah.
Gentle. You got to be ever so gentle, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things that, as like I said, as I have dealt with it personally, what I have found is that we know that healing is a decision. Change is a decision. And whether you're on one side of the spectrum, whether you're someone who's experiencing the person who displays narcissistic traits, or you're the person who displays narcissistic traits, we all have to decide that we want to heal.
Yeah.
And when we make the decision, we have to be ready
Mm-hmm.
to. It's painful. I won't even tell you no lies. Healing, going through the process of healing is painful because it requires you to relive the traumas and the hurts and the wounds. But I like to tell people that it's like surgery. Like, you can go through the pain, and you can do whatever you use, all these vices that you use every day to numb the pain. It's like taking pain medicine every day, right? Or you can go through the process of surgery, and in the moment it's painful, but you're coming to a permanent solution to fix the problem, so you don't have to take those pain pills every day. So it's worth it to go through the painful process for a moment to get extended healing, as opposed to just taking those pain pills every day. But what I found is that the people in my life who displayed those traits did not want to decide.
Yeah. So what do you
heal.
think? I think this is a good segue. Because I don't want to leave the survivor feeling like they need to be accountable for the healing of a person who has the trait. So speak to the survivor now, to where, okay, I hear you guys. I've tried everything. I've shown them videos. I prayed, and they're not willing to make the decision. So now what?
I'll tell you what I think. One is something that needs to be said. I don't think it can be the object of the narcissist's victimization that brings them to healing. And I'll tell you why. Because I think that person, those people still, they, even though they associate them with their trauma now, because it becomes such a big part of their lives, right? It almost has to be a neutral party. I don't even, and I think that's what I've learned in my own experiences, is that what I've learned, that when I've tried to bring things to their attention, it's always met with resistance. Well, you just think this, or you're just blaming me, or it's always met with resistance. And I believe that it has to be a neutral party that's not directly involved. But here's what I will say to the survivors, because this has been my own story. And actually we did a podcast where I told my story. So you guys, you'll be able to find that on Yari's podcast, Freedom from the Freedom from the Narcissistic Trap, and mine, For the Kingdom podcast. But what I think I found is that I presented things to them. And when you present to them your truth, it's about you telling the truth and getting that weight off of you. It's not about the response from them. And you have to come to peace with the fact that they might not respond in the way that you want them to respond. And then you have to decide, am I going to choose me, or am I going to choose you? And you have to decide, am I more valuable in this situation to me, or are you more valuable in this situation to me? Because if I love myself enough, I'm going to start to set boundaries in this relationship, so that I don't continue to put myself in the situation to be hurt over and over and over again. And it doesn't mean that I don't love you and I don't care about you, but I love me more.
Yeah.
And now it's time. I've presented to you the opportunity. I've told you how this made me feel. I've told you how your behavior has affected me. I've told you what I need in order to be good and okay in this relationship. And if you decide that you're not going to respond to that, one, when you really love someone, even if you don't feel like you did anything wrong, you will adjust, because they said that something that you did hurt them.
Yeah.
So now you, as the survivor, have to take inventory and go, is this relationship really what I'm looking for it to be? Am I experiencing the fruit from it that is it even beneficial to me? And if not, you have to begin to set boundaries and say, you know what? I love you, but I think it's time for me to love you from a distance.
Yeah.
And I need to set some boundaries for myself.
100%. True. And boundaries is another word that we throw out. And a lot of people don't realize that when you set boundaries, you are not telling the other person what they can't do. You are telling them what you're not going to allow in your life. And so in the next week or so, we're going to be doing a webinar. I'm going to be doing a webinar really helping you identify discernment, because that's step one. Like you need to be able to discern what's going on. And after you discern what's going on, then you need to really be able to set boundaries. But as we wrap, is there anything that you want to leave with either the person who is just going saying, what, I've heard your message and I'm ready to change, or the survivor who is saying, I've heard your message and I too am ready to change? Maybe just some words of encouragement, or just anything that's on your heart.
I want to say that on both sides, you're not too far gone to have an experience of redemption and transformation. One. So, but again, and This is a thing that I've talked about when you are someone who everybody has painted as the villain, which a lot of people have in regard to, narcissists, a lot of times there's not a safe space for you to come, and because everybody's judging, everybody's condemning, everybody, and God wants you to be able to bring those things to the altar without judgment and without condemnation. And so if you want help doing that, I am absolutely willing to help. Yari is absolutely willing to help. And we are a safe space, judgment free, condemnation free. At the end of the day, we have all sinned and fallen short, and we have all done things that we are not proud of. And you can come back from it, and you will, we will not judge you for what you've gone through. You ain't the villain in our, you're in my eyes, you're also a victim, because what we talked about, hurt people, we all have, just like we have natural DNA, we have spiritual DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times these things, these traits, they're spirits. And when a lot of times it's generational, it's continuing in a generation. And if the generation before you did not break it, then it's handed down to you in your spiritual DNA. Some of this stuff didn't even come from you.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it was handed down from a previous generation that didn't break it. And so I will say to you, have the courage to be the chain breaker.
Amen. Amen.
And to the survivors, I think a lot of times what happens is, as someone, like I said, myself, who's experienced it, we feel guilty for separating ourselves. We feel guilty for prioritizing ourselves. We feel guilty for deciding, you know what, I need to be a little bit selfish right now because this is not good for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would say to you is, don't feel guilty about setting those boundaries. Don't feel guilty about prioritizing yourself. Don't feel guilty if that means you got to walk away. It doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you don't love or care about that person. It just means you got to do what you got to do in order to be healthy and have peace and joy in your own life.
Amen. So where can they find you, Faith?
You can find me on Instagram at Faith_Cawthon-Green. On Facebook at Faith Cawthon-Green. You can email me at breathofgodworldwide@gmail.com. And I'm also on TikTok at Faith for the Kingdom.
Yes. And then every Monday, we have you have access to Faith Live, where we do a phenomenal topic, Bible study-ish, but it's more the reason why I say Bible study-ish, because it is breath of life. It is actually what you are living, and to bring forth an issue or a problem and get prayer. And so that's every Monday, 8:00, and it's free.
Yes. I'll post the link on Instagram, and I post it on Facebook also, so you can find the information to join. Normally I'll post it on Monday mornings on Instagram and Facebook. So if you want to join the Bible study group, you can do that. You can find the information on Monday mornings. And soon I'm going to be going live with the Breath of God website. So you guys just stay tuned. If you follow my Instagram page, you'll be able to get access to all of the resources, one-on-one coaching. You'll be able to sign up for one-on-one coaching if that's something that you're interested in. If you're interested in prayer, also my podcast. So all of those things will be going live on the website probably within the next week. So I'll do an announcement on my social media to let you know when that's going live.
And I just want to encourage anybody who feels that they have with this message. If you are feeling like you need professional help, I just want to tell you that there is healing available to you. And if you are wanting professional help, please reach out to me to schedule a consultation. I do accept insurance for Georgia residents. And I want you to also join my Facebook group. There we offer support, live help. And so thank you so very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Faith.
Yes. Thank you for having me on.
Will be the last conversation. So please drop a comment if this has your heart in any way. And we'll see you later.
All right.
All right.
Bye. Okay.